Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are gathered in the quiet glow of our screens to talk about something most of us would rather avoid: the subtle, nearly invisible signals that our loved ones are nearing the end of their journey. Picture this: your mother, who once fussed over every meal, now pushes her food around the plate, her clothes hanging a little looser each week. Or your father, who used to fill the room with his laughter, now sits in silence, his eyes distant, his energy spent. You might think, it's just old age, and move on. But what if I told you that these are not just quirks of getting older, but the body's way of whispering goodbye? You might not survive the regret of missing these signs. I've spent 3 decades as a head nurse in a long-term care hospital, and I've heard the same words from grieving families over and over. If only I'd known. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far this little community reaches. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for a soft noise. And let's begin our journey tonight. The story I'm about to share is not just mine. It's the story of thousands of families, of mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers, who sent out their final signals, hoping someone would notice. It's a story of missed opportunities, but also of hope, because by learning to see these signs, you can give your loved ones the gift of a gentle, meaningful farewell. Let's start with a memory that still haunts me. There was a daughter who clung to my hand at her mother's funeral, tears streaming down her face. She stopped eating. She kept talking about the past, but I thought it was just old age. She sobbed. If I'd known, I would have said goodbye properly. That moment, raw and unfiltered, is why I'm here tonight. I want to help you avoid that same pain. There's a strange comfort in the routines of old age. Tea at 4, a favorite chair by the window, the slow shuffle down the hallway. But sometimes, those routines start to unravel. The tea goes untouched. The chair sits empty. The hallway feels longer than ever. These are not just the marks of time passing. They are the body's way of preparing for the end, and yet, most families miss these signals, lost in the busyness of daily life or the denial that anything could really change. Here's a piece of wisdom I've learned: the end rarely comes without warning. In fact, most elders begin to show clear signs 6 months to a year before they pass. The problem is, these signs are easy to dismiss until it's too late. There's even an ongoing debate among geriatricians about whether these changes are inevitable or if they can be delayed with intervention. Some argue that with enough nutrition and social engagement, decline can be slowed. Others believe the body has its own timeline, and all we can do is listen. Let me share a marginal fact that might surprise you. In some cultures, elders are believed to sense their own departure and begin to tidy up their lives, giving away possessions, settling old arguments, or simply withdrawing. It's as if the body and mind are in quiet agreement, preparing for the next journey, whether you believe in such intuition or not. The physical and emotional changes are real, and they deserve our attention. So tonight, as we move through these stories and signs, I invite you to listen not just with your ears, but with your heart. Notice the small things, the untouched meal, the distant gaze, the stories of childhood told again and again. These are the signals that matter. And if you're lucky enough to catch them, you have a chance to make the last chapter of your loved one's life as beautiful and meaningful as the first. Now, let's move deeper into the first of these signals, the one that is most often overlooked, yet speaks volumes if you know how to listen. The first sign, and perhaps the most quietly devastating, is the sudden or steady loss of weight. It's easy to brush off, after all. Who among us hasn't skipped a meal or two, or found our favorite jeans a bit looser after a stressful week? But in the elderly, this is rarely just a matter of appetite. I remember a patient, Mrs. Foy Park, whose family would joke about her dieting when her skirts began to sag. They'd laugh, saying, "She's finally getting her model figure." But beneath the humor was a truth they didn't want to face. Her body was letting go. Weight loss in the final year of life is not the same as the slow thinning of age. It's a rapid, sometimes shocking change. The body, for reasons even the best doctors still debate, begins to reject nourishment. Some say it's the gut's declining ability to absorb nutrients. Others argue it's a metabolic shift, the body's way of conserving energy for only the most vital functions. There's even a theory that the body, sensing its own limits, starts to shut down non-essential systems, like a city dimming its lights at night. I've seen it time and again. A belt notch tighter, a favorite blouse hanging limp, the face growing gaunt. Families often notice only in hindsight, when the change is too obvious to ignore. "She just wasn't hungry," they'll say, or "He always loved his food, but lately, nothing tasted right." The truth is, the body is sending a message, one that's easy to miss if you're not looking for it. Here's a strange tidbit. In some Scandinavian nursing homes, staff are trained to measure not just weight, but the circumference of the upper arm and thigh, looking for subtle muscle loss that can precede visible weight changes. It's a practice that hasn't caught on everywhere, but it's a reminder that the body's decline is often more complex than a number on a scale. What should you do if you notice this in someone you love? The instinct is to push food, to coax and cajole, to make every meal a battleground. But in my experience, this only adds stress. Instead, offer small, soft meals, soups, porridges, foods that slip down easily. Hydration is even more important. The elderly often lose their sense of thirst, and dehydration can hasten decline. I once joked with a patient that water was the elixir of youth, and she replied, "If that's true, I'm already a mummy." We both laughed, but I made sure she sipped her tea a little more often after that. There's a wisdom in accepting what the body can handle. Forcing food can lead to choking, aspiration, or simply more discomfort. Instead, focus on comfort and dignity. If your loved one wants only a spoonful of ice cream, let that be enough. Sometimes, the smallest pleasures are the most meaningful. This brings us to a public debate that's been simmering in the world of geriatric care. Should families and caregivers intervene aggressively when elders stop eating? Or should they respect the body's natural process? Some argue that with enough supplements and encouragement, decline can be reversed. Others, myself included, believe that at a certain point, the kindest thing is to honor the body's wishes. There's no easy answer, and every family must find their own path. One thing is certain: weight loss is rarely just about food. It's about the body's journey, the slow letting go. It's a signal that time is precious and that every moment matters. I remember another patient, Mr. Lee, who lost 10 kilograms in 6 months. His family, at first, tried to tempt him with his favorite dishes, spicy stews, sweet rice cakes. But eventually, they realized that what he wanted most was company. They began to eat together, sharing small bites, telling stories. In those final months, the table became a place of laughter and love, not just calories. So, if you notice the clothes growing looser, the meals left unfinished, don't panic, but don't ignore it either. See it as an invitation to draw closer, to savor the time you have. And remember, sometimes the most important nourishment is not what's on the plate, but who's sitting beside you. As we move forward, keep this in mind. The body speaks in whispers before it shouts. If you listen closely, you'll hear what it's trying to say. Fatigue is a word we toss around so casually. I'm tired, we say, after a long day at work or a sleepless night. But the exhaustion that signals the body's final chapter is something altogether different. It's not the kind of tiredness that a nap or a strong cup of coffee can fix. It's a deep, unyielding weariness that seeps into the bones. A kind of fatigue that makes even the smallest tasks, brushing teeth, walking to the bathroom, feel like climbing a mountain. I remember Mr. Hahn, a retired farmer who prided himself on rising before dawn every day, even in his 80s. One spring, he began sleeping later and later until he could barely make it out of bed by noon. His family thought he was just slowing down, but I saw the signs. The way he'd pause halfway to the kitchen, the way he'd sit, breathless, after tying his shoes. Within 7 months, he was gone. His body had entered what I call energy conservation mode, a last-ditch effort to keep the most vital systems running by shutting down everything else. There's a strange, almost poetic phenomenon that sometimes occurs in this stage. The rally for a day or two. The person seems to regain their old energy, chatting, eating, even joking. Families often mistake this for recovery, but it's usually the body's final surge before the end. I once had a patient, Mrs. Kim, who hadn't spoken in days, suddenly ask for her favorite song. Her family gathered, sang with her, and the next morning, she slipped away peacefully. It's as if the body, knowing the end is near, gives one last gift, a chance to say goodbye. This kind of exhaustion is not just physical, it's emotional and social, too. People begin to withdraw, skipping family gatherings, avoiding phone calls, losing interest in hobbies that once brought them joy. It's easy to misinterpret this as depression or stubbornness, but it's often the body's way of conserving precious energy. There's an ongoing debate in the medical community about how much to encourage activity in this stage. Some experts argue that gentle movement can help maintain function, while others caution that pushing too hard can cause harm. My advice: let your loved one set the pace. If they want to rest, let them rest. If they want to walk, walk with them, slowly, gently, without pressure. Here's a marginal fact that might surprise you. In some cultures, elders are encouraged to rest into death, spending their final weeks in quiet contemplation, surrounded by family. In others, there's a push to keep moving, to fight decline at all costs. Neither approach is right or wrong. What matters is honoring the wishes of the person at the center of it all. I once cared for a woman named Mrs. Choi, who spent her last months sitting by the window, watching the world go by. Her daughter would visit every afternoon, bringing tea and holding her hand. They rarely spoke, but the silence was filled with love. One day, Mrs. Choi whispered, "This is enough." And it was. Sometimes, presence is the greatest gift we can offer. There's wisdom in recognizing that not all battles are meant to be fought. When exhaustion sets in, it's a sign that the body is preparing for something bigger than any of us can control. It's a time to slow down, to cherish the quiet moments, to let go of expectations. If your loved one seems more tired than usual, don't rush to fix it. Instead, ask what they need. Maybe it's a nap. Maybe it's a story. Maybe it's just your hand in theirs. And if you find yourself frustrated, because let's be honest, it's hard to watch someone you love fade away, remember that this is not about giving up. It's about honoring the journey, respecting the body's wisdom, and finding peace in the time you have left. So, as you notice the signs of deepening fatigue, take a breath. Slow your own pace. Sit beside your loved one, even if you say nothing at all. Sometimes, the quietest moments are the ones that echo the loudest in our memories. Memory is a curious thing. It can be sharp as a tack one day and as slippery as a bar of soap the next. But when the mind begins to retreat in the final months of life, it's not just about forgetting where the keys are or mixing up the names of grandchildren. It's a deeper, more profound shift, a gentle turning inward, as if the mind is packing away the present and revisiting the rooms of the past. I remember Mrs. Jung, a former school teacher with a mind like a steel trap. She could recite poetry from memory and correct her grandchildren's grammar with a single raised eyebrow. But one autumn, she began to repeat herself, asking the same questions over and over. She'd tell stories from her childhood, her eyes lighting up as if she were back in her father's garden, chasing butterflies. Her family worried she was developing dementia, but her tests came back normal. 5 months later, she was gone. It was as if her mind had chosen to spend its last days in the comfort of old memories, rather than the uncertainty of the present. This kind of cognitive change is not the same as the slow, steady decline of Alzheimer's or other dementias. It's often sudden, and it's accompanied by a withdrawal from the world. People who were once the life of the party become quiet, content to sit in silence or stare out the window. They may lose interest in conversations, preferring instead to listen or simply be. It's easy to mistake this for depression, but it's more like a gentle fading, a softening of the boundaries between past and present. There's an ongoing debate among neurologists about what causes this shift. Some believe it's due to reduced blood flow to the brain, while others argue it's a psychological response to the awareness of mortality. Still others suggest it's a form of life review, a natural process in which the mind sorts through memories, making peace with the past. Whatever the cause, the result is the same: a turning inward, a quieting of the mind. Here's a strange fact. In some cultures, elders who begin to talk more about their childhood or long-lost relatives are seen as preparing for the afterlife. It's believed that by revisiting these memories, they are making peace with their journey and getting ready to say goodbye. Whether you believe in such traditions or not, there's something undeniably poignant about hearing a loved one recount the stories that shaped their life. If you notice these changes in someone you love, resist the urge to snap them out of it. Don't scold or correct, or try to drag them back into the present. Instead, meet them where they are. Listen to their stories. Even if you've heard them 100 times, ask gentle questions about their memories. Create a calm, quiet environment. Dim the lights. Turn off the TV. Let the silence settle. Sometimes, the greatest comfort you can offer is simply to be present, to bear witness to the life they've lived. I once sat with Mr. Yoon, a man who had stopped speaking almost entirely. His granddaughter would visit every week, sitting beside him and holding his hand. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the window, she began to hum a lullaby he used to sing to her as a child. Slowly, he turned to her, smiled, and whispered, "My little star." It was the only thing he said that day, but it was enough. In that moment, the past and present merged, and love filled the space between them. There's wisdom in letting go of the need for constant conversation or activity. When the mind begins to retreat, it's a sign that the journey is nearing its end. It's a time to honor the stories, to cherish the silences, to let the memories wash over you like a gentle tide. If your loved one seems distant or lost in thought, don't take it personally. They are not leaving you. They are simply finding their way home. And if you find yourself grieving the loss of the person they once were, remember that this is a natural part of the process. The mind, like the body, knows when it's time to rest. By accepting this, you can find peace in the moments you have left and create memories that will sustain you long after they are gone. So, as you notice the signs of cognitive change and emotional withdrawal, take a deep breath, sit quietly, listen to the stories. Even if they don't make sense, hold a hand, share a smile. Let the silence speak. Sometimes, the most important conversations are the ones that happen without words. The body's defenses are remarkable. Think of all the years they've kept us safe from colds, cuts, and the occasional questionable street food. But as the end of life approaches, those defenses begin to falter. sometimes with alarming speed. It's not just about catching a cold more often or taking a little longer to heal from a scrape. It's a fundamental shift. The immune system, once a vigilant guard, now seems to lower its shield, letting in ailments that would have been shrugged off in younger days. I recall Mrs. Dang, a woman who prided herself on never missing a day of work, not even for the flu. In her final year, she seemed to catch every bug that passed through the nursing home. A sniffle would turn into a chest infection. A paper cut would linger, red and angry, for weeks. Her family thought it was just bad luck, but I knew better. The body, in its wisdom, was redirecting its energy, no longer fighting every invader, but focusing on the most essential functions. It's a quiet surrender, not of spirit, but of biology. There's a strange, almost counterintuitive fact here. Some studies suggest that the immune system doesn't just weaken with age, but actually becomes dysregulated. It can overreact to minor threats, causing inflammation, while underreacting to real dangers. This paradox is still debated in academic circles. Some researchers argue that boosting the immune system with supplements or vaccines can help, while others caution that too much intervention can do more harm than good. The truth, as always, is somewhere in the messy middles. If you notice your loved one getting sick more often, or if small wounds seem to linger, don't panic, but do pay attention. These are not just inconveniences, they are signals that the body is shifting its priorities. Infections that once cleared up in days now drag on for weeks. A simple UTI can cause confusion or delirium. Even a mild cold can sap what little energy remains. It's a time for vigilance, but also for acceptance. Here's a piece of wisdom I've gathered over the years. Sometimes, the best medicine is not another pill or another round of antibiotics, but comfort and care. Keep wounds clean, encourage gentle hygiene, and make sure your loved one is as comfortable as possible. If they develop a fever or seem unusually tired, consult a doctor, but remember that not every illness needs to be fought with the full arsenal of modern medicine. Sometimes, the kindest thing is to let the body do what it can and to focus on quality of life rather than quantity. I once cared for Mr. Seo, a man who had survived 2 wars and a lifetime of hard labor. In his final months, he developed a persistent cough that no medicine could cure. His family was desperate, trying every remedy they could find. But in the end, what brought him the most peace was not another prescription, but the simple act of sitting together, sharing stories, and letting him rest. He passed away quietly, surrounded by love. His family finally understanding that sometimes letting go is the bravest thing you can do. There's an ongoing debate in palliative care about how aggressively to treat infections in the final months of life. Some argue that every effort should be made to prolong life, while others believe that comfort should take precedence. I've seen families torn apart by these decisions, each side convinced they know what's best. My advice? Talk openly with your loved one, if possible, and with their medical team. Make a plan that honors their wishes and values, even if it means choosing comfort over cure. Here's a marginal fact to ponder. In some traditional societies, elders who fall ill repeatedly are seen as being called home by their ancestors. Illness is not feared, but accepted as a natural part of the journey. Whether you find comfort in such beliefs or not, there's wisdom in accepting what we cannot change. So, as you notice the signs of declining immunity, more frequent infections, slower healing, a general sense of frailty, take it as a cue to slow down, to focus on comfort, and to cherish the time you have. Offer warmth, gentle care, and above all, presence. Sometimes, the greatest healing comes not from medicine, but from love. And if you find yourself struggling with guilt or doubt, wondering if you're doing enough, remember that there is no perfect way to navigate this journey. All you can do is your best, with compassion and honesty. The body knows when it's time to rest. Your job is to walk beside your loved one, offering support, understanding, and the reassurance that they are not alone. As we move into the final signals, keep this in mind. The body's decline is not a failure, but a natural part of life's cycle. By recognizing these changes, you can offer your loved one the dignity and comfort they deserve, and find peace in the knowledge that you did everything you could. Breathing and heartbeat, two rhythms that have accompanied us since our very first moments, become strangely unpredictable as the end draws near. If you've ever sat beside someone in their final days, you know the sound, breaths that come in shallow bursts, then pause, then resume with a soft rattle. The hands and feet, once warm and busy, now grow cool and still. These are the body's final signals, and they are as profound as they are unsettling. I remember Mr. Lee, a man who wore thick wool socks even in the height of summer. His family teased him, but I knew what it meant. His circulation was faltering, his heart no longer able to send blood to the farthest reaches of his body. In his last weeks, his breathing changed, too, sometimes rapid and shallow, sometimes slow and labored, with long, silent gaps in between. His daughter would sit by his bed, counting the seconds between breaths, her own heart pounding in her chest. "Is this it?" she'd whisper. "Is he leaving us now?" The truth is, no one can say for sure. The body has its own mysterious timeline, and all we can do is bear witness. There's a strange phenomenon known as Cheney-Stokes respiration, a pattern of breathing marked by gradual increases and decreases in depth, followed by periods of apnea, or no breathing at all. It's common in the final days of life, and while it can be frightening to watch, it's rarely uncomfortable for the person experiencing it. In fact, many patients seem unaware of the changes, drifting in and out of sleep, their faces peaceful. The debate among clinicians is whether to intervene with oxygen or medications, or simply to let nature take its course. Some argue that intervention can ease anxiety for families, while others believe it only prolongs the inevitable. If you notice these changes, irregular breathing, cool extremities, a bluish tint to the lips or fingertips, know that these are signs the body is winding down. the heart, too, may become erratic, beating quickly one moment and slowly the next. Sometimes, you can see the pulse fluttering at the neck or feel it weaken at the wrist. It's a time of uncertainty, and it's natural to feel anxious or helpless. Here's a marginal fact. In some cultures, the dying are surrounded by family members who sing or chant softly, believing that the sound helps guide the spirit on its journey. Whether or not you share these beliefs, there's comfort in the idea that we are not alone in our final moments, that the rhythms of breath and heart are accompanied by the rhythms of love and memory. What can you do during this time? First, focus on comfort. If your loved one is struggling to breathe, try raising the head of the bed or propping them up with pillows. Keep the room cool and well ventilated, but avoid direct drafts. Offer sips of water or ice chips if they can swallow. And use a damp cloth to moisten their lips. If their hands and feet are cold, cover them with a light blanket or soft socks, nothing too heavy. As this can feel suffocating, there's wisdom in simplicity. Sometimes, the most important thing you can do is simply to be present. Hold a hand, stroke a forehead, whisper words of love and reassurance. If you feel overwhelmed, remember that you are not alone. Nurses, hospice workers, and palliative care teams are there to support you, to answer your questions, and to help you navigate the uncertainty. There's an ongoing debate in palliative care about the use of aggressive interventions in the final days. Should we try to fix every problem or focus on comfort and dignity? My own view, shaped by years at the bedside, is that less is often more. The goal is not to prolong life at any cost, but to ensure that the time remaining is as peaceful and meaningful as possible. I once cared for Mrs. Park, whose family filled her room with her favorite music in her last days. They took turns sitting with her, reading poetry, and sharing memories. When her breathing changed, they didn't panic. They simply held her hand, whispered their goodbyes, and let her go in her own time. It was a beautiful, gentle farewell, a reminder that even in the face of death, there can be grace. Here's a final piece of wisdom. The end of life is not a medical emergency, but a natural transition. By recognizing the signs, irregular breathing, cool skin, a slowing heart, you can prepare yourself and your loved one for what's to come. You can create an environment of peace, comfort, and love, and ensure that the final moments are filled not with fear, but with connection. So, as you notice the changes in breath and heartbeat, take a deep breath yourself. Slow down. Be present. Let the rhythms of love and memory carry you through. Sometimes, the softest goodbye is the most powerful of all. Regret is a heavy companion, especially when it arrives too late. I have seen it settle on the shoulders of sons and daughters, husbands and wives, like a winter coat they cannot remove. But I have also seen something else, something gentler and more luminous. When families recognize the signs and choose to embrace the final moments, rather than run from them. This is the wisdom that comes from facing the end with open eyes and an open heart. There was a family I will never forget, the Kims. When their father began to show the unmistakable signs, weight loss, exhaustion, confusion, frequent infections, and finally, the irregular breathing, they did not panic or retreat into denial. Instead, they gathered around him, not as mourners, but as companions for the journey. They moved his bed into the living room so he could be part of every conversation, every meal, every laugh. His grandchildren did their homework at his bedside, and his wife read him the newspaper each morning, even when he no longer responded. This is not to say there were no tears, or that fear and sadness did not visit their home. Of course they did. But by recognizing the signals, the Kims were able to transform what could have been a time of regret into a season of connection. They asked him questions about his childhood, recorded his stories, and even made a family history book, one that would outlast his physical presence. They did not try to force him to eat or to walk when he was too tired. Instead, they focused on comfort, dignity, and love. Here's a strange but true fact. In some cultures, families will gather to witness the final days, believing that the presence of loved ones helps the dying person let go peacefully. There is even a term in Tibetan Buddhism, phowa, which refers to the conscious act of transferring the mind at the moment of death, often aided by the prayers and presence of family. Whether or not you subscribe to such beliefs, there is something undeniably powerful about being present, about bearing witness to the final chapter of a life. There is an ongoing debate in the world of end-of-life care about how much to involve families in the process. Some argue that too much involvement can be overwhelming, while others believe it is essential for closure and healing. My experience tells me that families who are present, who touch, talk, and simply sit with their loved one, fare better in the long run. They have fewer regrets, and their grief, while still deep, is softened by the knowledge that they did everything they could. One piece of wisdom I have learned is that the last moments are not just about saying goodbye. They are about saying thank you. I love you. And sometimes, I'm sorry. These words, spoken or unspoken, have a power that lingers long after the final breath. I have seen families who missed the signs, who arrived too late, haunted by the things left unsaid. But I have also seen families who, by recognizing the signals, were able to fill the final days with music, laughter, and love. If you find yourself in this position, if you notice the signs and realize that time is short, do not waste a moment on guilt or self-blame. Instead, focus on what you can do now. Sit with your loved one. Hold their hand. Tell them the stories you want them to carry with them. Play their favorite music. Bring them their favorite flowers. Let them feel the sun on their face one last time. These are the moments that matter. Here's a marginal fact. In some hospice programs, families are encouraged to create memory boxes filled with letters, photos, and small mementos. These boxes become treasures, not just for the dying, but for those left behind. They are a tangible reminder that love endures, even when the body does not. There is wisdom in accepting that the end is not a failure, but a natural part of life. By recognizing the signs and responding with compassion, You can transform regret into gratitude and fear into peace. You can create a farewell that is not just an ending, but a celebration of everything that came before. So, as you face the final moments, remember, you are not alone. Others have walked this path before you, and their stories are woven into the fabric of our shared humanity. Take comfort in the knowledge that by being present, by loving fiercely and without reservation, you are giving your loved one the greatest gift of all. There is a certain grace in the way some families meet the end, not with panic or denial, but with a quiet, determined love. I want to share with you the story of the Choi family, whose journey through their grandmother's final months remains one of the most beautiful examples of presence I have ever witnessed. It is a story that, I hope, will offer you both comfort and practical guidance as you navigate your own path. When Mrs. Choi began to show the first signs, her appetite waning, her frame shrinking, her laughter growing softer, her family noticed. They didn't dismiss it as just old age. Instead, they gathered for a family meeting, each member sharing their observations and fears. They decided, together, to make her last months as rich and meaningful as possible. They rearranged their schedules so someone was always home. They brought her favorite foods, even when she could only manage a spoonful. They filled her room with flowers from her garden, the scent of lilies and roses mingling with the afternoon sun. As her energy faded, Mrs. Choi spent more time resting, her eyes closed, her breathing slow and shallow. Her grandchildren would sit beside her, reading aloud from her favorite books, or simply holding her hand in silence. Her daughter played old records, the music of Mrs. Choi's youth, filling the house with memories. Sometimes, Mrs. Choi would open her eyes and smile, whispering a word or two, beautiful, or thank you. These moments, fleeting as they were, became treasures for the family. There's a strange but touching tradition in some cultures. When a loved one is dying, the family will gather to share a meal in the same room, believing that the warmth and laughter will ease the transition. The Choi family did just that. They brought dinner trays into Mrs. Choi's room, telling stories, laughing, and even arguing about who made the best kimchi. Mrs. Choi, though too weak to join in, listened with a peaceful expression, her family's voices a gentle lullaby. The academic debate about how much to involve children in the process is ongoing. Some experts worry that witnessing death may be traumatic for young ones, while others argue that it teaches resilience and the value of life. The Choi family chose inclusion. The youngest grandchild, only 6, drew pictures for her grandmother every day, taping them to the wall above the bed. When Mrs. Hosota Choi passed, the little girl said, "Grandma took my drawings with her to heaven." Who's to say she didn't? One piece of wisdom I've learned is that the rituals we create in these moments, whether it's sharing a meal, singing a song, or simply sitting in silence, become the stories we carry forward. They are the antidote to regret. The Choi family, in their grief, found comfort in the knowledge that they had done everything they could. They had not tried to force Mrs. Choi to eat or to fight her decline. Instead, they honored her wishes, respected her pace, and filled her final days with love. Here's a marginal fact. In some hospice programs, families are encouraged to record the dying person's voice, capturing stories, advice, or even just the sound of their laughter. These recordings become cherished keepsakes, a way to keep the connection alive. The Choi family did this too. One afternoon, they asked Mrs. Choi to share her favorite memory. Her voice, though faint, was clear. The best days are the ones with all of you. As you face your own journey, remember that there is no perfect way to say goodbye. There will be moments of doubt, of sadness, of wishing you had done more. But if you meet the end with presence, with honesty, and with love, you will have given your loved one the greatest gift possible, a farewell filled with dignity and peace. So, as you notice the signs, the weight loss, the fatigue, the withdrawal, the infections, the changes in breath and heartbeat, let them be your guide. Let them remind you to slow down, to draw close, to savor every moment. Create your own rituals, your own stories, your own memories. And when the time comes, let go with grace, knowing that love endures beyond the final breath. Now, as we bring this journey to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned and how we can carry these lessons forward. As we come to the end of our time together tonight, I invite you to let the words settle softly around you, like the hush that follows a gentle rain. We have traveled through the quiet corridors of old age, pausing to notice the subtle signals that so often go unseen, the loosening of a belt, the deepening of fatigue, the mind's retreat into memory, the body's surrender to illness, and the final, fragile rhythms of breath and heartbeat. These are not just medical facts or clinical observations. They are the language of the body, the poetry of a life nearing its close. If you take nothing else from this journey, let it be this: the end of life is not a failure, nor is it something to be feared or hidden away. It is a natural, even sacred, part of our shared human experience. By learning to recognize the signs, you give yourself and your loved ones the chance to fill the final days with meaning, connection, and love. You can transform regret into gratitude and silence into presence. Remember the stories of the families who chose to gather, to listen, to hold hands, and share laughter, even as the shadows lengthened. Their courage and tenderness are a reminder that, even in the face of loss, there is beauty to be found. The rituals you create, the words you speak, the simple act of being there, these are the gifts that endure. So, as you turn off the lights tonight and let the quiet settle in, know that you are not alone. Others have walked this path before you, and their wisdom is now yours to carry. May you find peace in the moments you share, and may the memory of your love be a gentle light in the days to come.